day Charles was born was the most exciting day for his parents. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, had a big party thrown. They loved their little boy and would do anything to make him happy. Charles started kindergarten earlier than most children. Charles loved horses and cars. He loved the crayons and drawing books he played with in school. Coloring was a fun event for young Charlie, as everyone loved to call him. During an English class, the teacher gave an assessment. Mrs. Uche told her primary 2 class pupils to write a composition about themselves. The children hurriedly did their work as it was what the teacher had just taught them now, and it involved them writing their names, school, favorite food, and hobbies. In less than 10 minutes, the children started submitting their classwork. The teacher started grading their work.
Come here. Is this your classwork?
Yes ma, he stuttered.
What is your name?
My name is Charles, he innocently answered.
Spell Charles.
C-A-S-E, he mumbled. The teacher looked at him and asked him again, but this time she brought out her small rod. Charles, seeing the small rod, started to fidget. The teacher asked again,
Spell Charles!
He looked down at his feet, confused and scared. His teacher has been teaching him now how to correctly spell his name since the beginning of the term. So Charles tried harder to remember so he could avoid being whipped by his teacher for always forgetting how to spell his name. The teacher's shout made him realize she was very angry and was about raising her rod, when Charles shouted, C-A-R-L-E-S, remembering the correct spelling. During a diction class, Charles had gotten the spellings wrong, and the teacher asked the entire class to sing the mockery song for Charles. Charles always hated school because of Mrs. Uche, and his classmates always laughed at him when he gets the spelling wrong. But not just spelling. During comprehensions and phonology classes, he always did everything wrong, even though he knew the answers in his head. The school held a PTA meeting and Charles's mom came around. The teacher complained about Charles's poor performance in his academics.
Mrs. Thomas, I think Charles needs a private tutor. We already hired 2 private tutors. Is there still no improvement? Not much, Mrs. Thomas. I think it is just a phase. He will outgrow it when he gets to the next class. He tends to be very playful and forgetful, that's why. With 2 private tutorials and strong discipline, he will sit up. Okay, Mrs. Thomas, we will do our best.
Till Charles was 10 years old and in primary 5, he could not properly construct simple sentences and read short paragraphs. Even when he reads very slowly and tries to pronounce words in a funny manner that makes other children laugh at him. On a fateful day, an organization came to school named Candlelight Foundation. They came to give a talk about special children with special needs. After the talk, Miss Mary called Charles into her office and asked Charles to tell her about the comprehension they read in their English class. Charles explained the passage and the teacher was pleased. The teacher asked him to write it down, but Charles couldn't write more than 2 correct sentences without typographical errors, especially with words that have similar pronunciations or different spellings, or words that the pronunciations and the spelling doesn't correlate. The teacher then gave him a dictation on specific words, which he did very well on some and did badly on words with difficult pronunciations. Immediately, the teacher called Charles's mom to meet with her tomorrow at school. The mom came to the school and Miss Mary narrated her observations as well as a pamphlet of the organization that visited the school. And Miss Mary told Mrs. Thompson that the organization mentioned some specific symptoms that matches the behavior of Charles.
What could the symptoms be? They mentioned that a child with psychological dyslexia shows symptoms of difficulty in learning sound made with letters or letter combinations. They also experience difficulties in pronouncing unfamiliar words, difficulties in spelling words that are pronounced the same way but spelled differently. They are also slow readers and they avoid any sort of reading activities, and most of the symptoms are common with Charles. Really? And you mean they are willing to help us for free? Yes, that's what they said. That their consultation, their therapy sections, even their trainings, that all their services are free. I will discuss it with his dad when I get home. Thank you, Miss Mary. I really appreciate this.
Mrs. Thompson was willing to try anything at this point because she was very concerned and worried that her son won't make it to secondary school. She had tried so many alternatives, from disciplinary actions to spiritual intervention and also medical assistance, but no changes were forthcoming. And the Thomases had spent a lot trying to find a solution for their son. She had nothing else to lose, she said to herself. Charles's parents discussed this and were willing to give it a try. Charles began to see the behavioral therapist at Candlelight Foundation for Children with Special Needs thrice a week, and in a few months, they saw great improvement with their child.